Pan Am 360. I am Vitta Morales, joined here with Corey Thomas, Indigenous jazz artist from the Gesgapegiag region. Has 3 albums as of the time of this interview, which have been well received, receiving regular airplay on the CBC. Been featured in EC Music, is a nominee of the inaugural Oliver Jones Award. Did I get it all?
Oh yeah, we'll get way more into it as we do the interview, and I can update you on everything I've been doing for sure.
Perfect. So I think I'm going to start with the musical traditions of your nation. Does that come through in your original music? Do you make a point of drawing from musical traditions of the Gesgapegiag region, of the Mi'kmaq Nation?
So I wouldn't say that my music is generally inspired from traditional music. That's not specifically what I do. What I would say is that it socially draws from being a Mi'kmaq jazz musician, in the sense that everything that I'm playing is a reflection of my experience within my community. It is a reflection of the relationships that I've built within those communities, as well as the songs that I've grew up with in that community. I try to make sure that I bridge some kind of experience that connects all of those realities together. It's quite interesting. I say it's more of a reflection of my growth into being an urban Indigenous jazz musician, I guess I would say, more than being a Mi'kmaq jazz musician.
I see. You don't make a point necessarily of incorporating music from your nation into what you do now, but it is a part of you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's mostly in part because being an Indigenous musician, especially within jazz music, it's a big history that has kind of been taken away from Indigenous peoples being able to participate in this music, because it became commodified so academically. The communities that would celebrate jazz musicians as time went on were more urban communities instead of more of the rural reserves that were around, and thus we kind of just been pushed aside. And then what I would like to do is highlight more of my contribution to the works of jazz music that other Indigenous jazz artists have done and paved the way for, such as Oscar Pettiford, Mildred Bailey, Jim Pepper, Big Chief Russell Moore, all those type of cats. So these are a lot of individuals that never really got their due just because of how the economics of jazz music came to be at this time. And I want to make sure that there's a platform for Indigenous people to continue doing this music and also be highlighted doing this music.
I'm wondering, for your own journey, did you feel like you had to play a lot of catch up when you came to Montreal and establish yourself in jazz, whether that be because the access to jazz in Gesgapegiag in the more rural part of Quebec is harder to come by? I'm wondering, what was your experience like just trying to grow your chops?
Yeah, so that was a really big thing for me. I mean, the level here was so much greater than where I was coming from, but that's why I came here. That's why I wanted to meet that challenge. Yeah, on the reserve specifically, there's not a large jazz scene. It's mostly a lot of country or spiritual music, stuff like that. I do believe that it gave me a leg up in the sense that, like, I was used to having to fight these uphill battles, so I wasn't going to be deterred from seeking what I wanted, because I've already made it this far. And I feel like I also had a story to tell after that. The story in the sense that, like, I'm doing this because I want to highlight Indigenous people being involved in this music. I feel like I was able to come up with some very good music. I was able to collaborate with a lot of very great people. And I'm still continuing to do that, and I still receive a lot of relative success because of it. And, I'm not upset the least. Sometimes I feel like it is hard to feel like I belong, but that's becoming less and less an issue now, especially since Indigenous people are starting to pop up more and more in the scene. Like, you have so much new Indigenous jazz artists who are becoming very popular now. So you have like Julia Keefe, you have Malio Bombswin, who's a big one. You have Chuck Copenance. These are all Indigenous musicians who are trailblazing right now. And I want to be right there with them, kind of setting this path forward to inspire other people to participate in this music.
So, having learned jazz relatively later in your life, what are some of the other music scenes that you've experienced, other genres of music that you've experienced throughout your career and your time as a composer, as a writer, as a bassist, as everything?
Growing up, I was first inspired to begin playing music because I had an uncle who was in a Metallica tribute band. That's very far away from where I wound up being right now, but that's how it starts for everybody. You get inspired by those around you, and then eventually you start finding out what your own song is after that, and you continue down that path. So I started being obsessed with a lot of rock music, stuff like that, like most people do when they pick up an instrument. I started studying at St. Thomas University in Fredericton, where I did a lot of composition, and it was a lot of like Italian opera, like Puccini, stuff like that, Mozart. I had a teacher who really pushed us to create our own music a lot when we did our like small chamber ensembles, or when we had other artists come in that would present their work. We usually would do workshops after that where we'd present sketches, and I enjoyed doing that very much. I would say that's kind of the highlight of what I do, is that I like composing. I like writing music. I feel like that's kind of why we do all of this. There's a lot of flashy things like all the music theory things that we do while we're improvising is pretty chill and pretty cool, but I think at the heart of it, it's just finding sounds that entertain people or evoke an emotion. I enjoy listening to people blow over Donna Lee as much as the next person, but I also really enjoy hearing somebody just sing Moon River. But I've always explored different styles. I was in a bluegrass band before I came here, in Montgomery Street band. That was really fun. I was in a folk band, Sawmill Creek, before that. It just seems like I started off being very intensely into like rock and heavy metal, and eventually just cooled my jets into a nice zone where I am now, where I really feel like this is more my sound, this is what I do, and this is what I really like to do. I like to collaborate, and jazz music is a music of the people, by the people, for the people. So that's what I'm all about, community.
Any chance that we see you combine jazz and metal together?
The amount of times I've tried to do that and never gotten away with it. Maybe hopefully in the future somebody will allow me to get away with proposing such a crazy idea. And there are people that are doing it right now, which is awesome. But I also I think I want to be able to not copy or mimic two sounds and smash them together like some weird avocado milk shake.
And also make it sound worse.
Yeah, I want to contribute something nice to it. So I think it's about finding that sound that can really like marry those two things together. So yeah, maybe one day for sure.
Where do you see jazz music broadly, and do you think you'll continue to play it, or will you sort of drift into something else? Will you give it up in favor of something else as you continue your music?
That's a very interesting question. I think that jazz music is doing a lot better actually than I think it was doing before, because I feel like there's more people who are involved with it, and the spirit of jamming, like you go anywheres now, there's just jams that exist, and like the music is growing. I feel like for a period jazz music kind of just became a parody of itself, where everybody was like, no, jazz music's this thing and it's gotta swing like this, and if it doesn't sound like Horace Silver wrote it, then you're doing something wrong. Whereas now people don't care. Like the hierarchy of jazz is it's kind of diminishing, which is really great. I think that that's really cool. I don't think that right now we're in a time where venues are not being supported well, so therefore artists are not being supported well. People are not able to attend music as much. But with the rise of the internet being the main revenue as well as the main presentation of this music, that it creates different sounds and avenues. I think people are really hip to that, and I want to be hip to that, and I definitely don't want to get left behind. So I'm definitely going to keep playing this music. I do experiment with other things. I've recently got a grant to write my own music that's much different than jazz. So instead of trying to smash those two things together like we were talking about earlier, I'm keeping them segregated for the moment. But all the musics have influence from everything that I've studied or been interested in my whole life. I'm going to continue playing jazz music probably for the rest of my life, whether it be for Backwater Township or another project or whatever, is yet to be seen. But again, Backwater Township is just a name I gave to this project because I just didn't think the Corey Thomas experience was really what I was trying to go for. I'm not as showy as some people are.
I have to wonder, is the significance of Backwater Township the fact that, you know, you've come from a more rural part of the country where you had less opportunity to learn and be involved in jazz, and maybe that's the brand or the spice that you give jazz now, is that sort of backwater flavor? I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think Gesgapegiag loves it when I call them backwater. But you're right, like that is the spirit behind it, and it was very representative of what we are, because we were always trying to push our way into the scene, especially while we were studying. We were like, oh, we were being told jazz has to be this way and blah blah blah, and so we were trying so hard to be this narrative that we were told what jazz was, where rather eventually we accepted that we're never going to fit that, and we have to find our own sound. And we are a backwater township. Like, there's no better way to put it. So I think it's very important to be truthful to yourself, especially if you're going to do art in that sense.
What do you have planned next for Backwater Township? I mean, so far it's sort of this. It's probably your most significant project to date, I would say, in terms of how busy it's keeping you and the amount of stuff that you're producing for it. What do you want to do with it next, if you could have your way, if everything goes well?
Well, honestly, I'm a very lucky guy because I did not expect it to blow up to the point that it did. Like, it was just something that we used to do because people would ask us to do gigs, or we felt like we had to. While we were studying, it was either you play music or you're going to be homeless. And every time we weren't playing, it was like, oh God, we're going to be homeless after this. There was no middle ground. And I think that just pushed us so much at the beginning that we were able to, as Backwater Township, we were able to really start making a lot of buzz, and I'm so grateful for that. I've received regular radio play from CBC. Saturday Night Live Jazz Show plays us quite a bit. Minotan plays us a lot on Music EC. We get a big Spotify playlist have picked us up after that. You know, there are people that are listening to Backwater Township all over the world, which to me still blows my mind. Coming up next, we have another live album that we're going to produce. I feel like Backwater Township is really at its best while we are performing. The studio is always great, and I love recording albums in the studio, but playing live is definitely the meat and potatoes of Backwater Township. Like any jazz show, it's about the albums itself are just previews for whatever the live show is. So why not just make the albums the live shows? So we're going to make another live album. I would love to do an album in the future that is a partnership or features a lot of other Indigenous artists that I love, that I follow, that I have worked with in the past in some capacity, but like have them featured for every single composition to work with them. That's a very labor intensive project, and I also think it would take a lot of money. So I don't know how.
If you're a philanthropist.
Yeah, if you want to be a patron
Yes,
of the arts. Yeah, so if you're going to be a patron of the arts, yeah, hit me up. But I would love to see that happen. I would like to do another tour, and I would like to like hit up a lot of smaller places. Like I would really like to go to places where
all of the backwaters, perhaps?
all of the backwater townships. Definitely the Backwater Township tour. So I'm hoping that I can continue doing that in whatever capacity and have Backwater Township continue to grow and flourish. And I don't want it to get stale. I always want to try new things. Last show we had an interpretive dancer that came out to perform with us, and that was amazing. So who knows, one day maybe there might be a Backwater Township musical.
Amazing. Is it safe to say that for new and interested people who don't know what you do, haven't heard you yet, is it safe to say that they'll get much more out of it to see you live than the recorded music?
I think they should do both, and they should do it regularly. Before you go to bed, put on Backwater Township.
Put it on loop?
Put it on loop. Yeah, and give me that 0.006 cents. And I think you should go see it live too. I think there's something for everybody. The older albums is a lot more traditional jazz, and the more and more we go forward, the more and more we introduce new sounds, new ideas, new concepts, new vibes, all in general. Like the first album started with being a lot of more standard type music, where we played some jazz blueses, and then we played some rhythm changes. Then towards the second album, I got very much more introspective. It was much more of trying to recreate the landscapes that I had in my mind of Gesgapegiag itself. And because it's a big fishing community, it's close to the water. Gesgapegiag is Mi'kmaq for where the river widens. So
this is right on the mouth of the Saint Laurent?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's right there, and the peninsula is where it kind of opens up after that. So that's Gaspé is the francophone word for Gesgapegiag. So Gesgapegiag is its original name. That second album was trying to make sure that it sounded very like there was a lot of reverb. It was very reverb heavy because I wanted it to sound very wet. We made it so that there was always this kind of underlying calming pulse that was there, because the waters are just hearing it is the most relaxing thing that you can have. And then the third album was like our party album. We were like, okay, let's have fun with this album. We have first song is Billionaires in Space, which is an ode to billionaires bankrupting our earth to have a fun road trip to Mars. And then after that you got Butt Jazz.
They will do that if you let them.
They're definitely on their way. And so Butt Jazz is also just like me being obsessed with like really, really terrible butt rock music, because I can't help myself to like this stuff.
Can you let everyone know what butt rock is?
Butt rock is like really like macho commercial things that would be on a Levi's commercial, I think. That's what butt rock is. So I was like, how do I make jazz the opposite of what it's being portrayed now? And so butt jazz is definitely like, if there's a genre of what I want, what I do, I want it to be that.
Any pentatonic scales in butt jazz?
It's just one big pentatonic scale. It's kind of like the bell curve. Like you get so good at the first, you start with the pentatonic, you learn all the other stuff, and then you realize you were home all along. And then we end the album with things like Uncle Bob, which is a song I wrote for my uncle, who was the one who was in the Metallica tribute band. So it's a very evocative of like something like Charles Mingus would write, and it's a celebration type piece where everything is kind of chaotic, things are happening, but it's still organized. And and we covered other songs like Come and Get Your Love by Redbone, which was very influential to me. And like most people, I heard it on Guardians of the Galaxy, and I was like, wow, that's chill. Like
well, I should say candidly, Corey, that I was in your project at the very beginning for maybe two or so years, maybe 2.5. But to see the difference, I think, between what you were doing then versus what you are doing now is, I must say, very, very impressive that you've attained, struck a chord with so many people in such a short amount of time. And I hope that only continues for you, because I'm sure that it'll just give me an excuse to interview you even more.
Vita, it warms my heart so much to hear you say that, and I really appreciate everything at that time, especially what we were doing with this project and everything that we're doing now. We're all trying the same thing. We're trying to figure out how we could just do this thing that we like and touch as much people as possible. And I'm surprised that people were so receptive to what I do and continue to be receptive to what I do. So I feel like I owe it to everybody to continue doing this in a meaningful way and to make sure that I'm doing it in a respectful way as well. Even though I just said that I want my music to be butt jazz, a soulless husk of art.
What's more respectful than that? I think I'll ask you this last one before we wrap it up. Do you, as you sort of navigate the future of your career, do you value keeping abreast of music industry trends, or will you just let, the music speak for itself and you'll play and write whatever you feel like doing at the time?
Yeah, well, it's hard to know. It's hard to feel like you can really have your pulse on what that is. I'm about to make a very controversial statement. I think a lot of people want to, especially when you're in, or when you're considered an Indigenous like artist of any kind, or you're doing Indigenous music, people tell you what they want, what you should be doing, or what they label Indigenous music, which I think is a bit stressful sometimes, as well as annoying, because I never go up to anybody else and tell them this is what your music should be, especially if I'm not part of that
You feel
culture.
like you have to hit particular beats.
Well, you do have to hit particular beats. If we're going to talk about what the industry itself wants to see, they want to see a very strong image of what they reflect as being Indigenous, Indigenous people involved in popular music. And that can be detrimental sometimes, because then you get a weird reflection of your own culture back to you that is not really representative in a good way, or you get people who are vultures who are going to latch onto that kind of stuff. So I try not to follow too much what trends and what the industry wants, but I definitely think it's great because it pushes you to try different things. Would I say that I'm going to be a affluent TikToker of any kind? Definitely not.
Well, I've seen you dance.
I will try. I definitely will in my spare time do those TikTok dances, but I think Backwater Township is more at home with being a misfit, and it's always going to be misfits trying to push their way into something that they were told they were not going to be in. And that's why I always try to make my groups be as diverse as possible. I try to represent different voices, women in music, especially women in jazz music. I try to represent the Latino community, the Latinx community. I have a lot of respect for all of these people that come in and do something and try to add their own voices to it, when it's become commodified so much by, like I said earlier several times, academia and a very hegemonic voice. Yeah.
A lot to chew on. Thank you very much, Corey. You gave us a lot of insightful takes, quite candidly, and all the best for you in your future musical endeavors, my friend.
Buddy, of course. Thank you so much. I really had a great time, and yeah, I hope whoever's listening got something out of it. If you're interested, go listen to Backwater Township. If you haven't listened to us already, we got 4 albums out right now on Spotify, on Apple Music, wherever you like to stream all your stuff. You can find us on YouTube, any social medias. Yeah, go wild.
Wherever good times are had. Thank you very much. This is Vitta Morales from Pan Am 360, wishing you a happy listening.